Egypt, land of ancient pharaohs, land of infinite deserts, land of pyramids and millennial mysteries. A gentle breeze lifts grains of golden sand. The Nile flows majestically toward the north. The sun shines relentlessly on ancient temples of stone. Welcome to Egypt. Welcome to the land of the pharaohs. Known as the cradle of civilization, this is a land where time is measured in millennia, where the desert embraces 95% of the territory, and where the river of life creates a green corridor that has nourished empires and dynasties. But let's start from the beginning. Egypt stands as the only country in the world that physically connects Africa, Asia, and the Mediterranean. A natural bridge between different worlds which has made this land a crossroads of cultures, trade, and conquests for over 5,000 years. It is here that the Nile, unique among great rivers and flowing northward, thanks to its continuous floods, has created oases of life in the middle of the planet's vastest desert. Without this sacred river, in fact, Egypt would have remained only sand and stones. Even today, 95% of the population lives within a few miles from its banks, faithful to a millennial pact between man and water. The sun indeed reigns supreme over this land for over 3,800 hours per year, making it one of the brightest countries in the world, but also among the hottest. Despite this extreme climate landscape, Egypt preserves the longest documented cultural continuity in human history. 5,000 years of uninterrupted civilization, which began in 3100 BC and still leaves its visible imprint everywhere today. There are temples, obelisks, and sarcophagi whose creation is lost in the mists of time. Furthermore, the ancient inhabitants of this land created a writing system that remained mysterious for 14 centuries after their disappearance. And we're talking about hieroglyphs, a complex set of symbols that represented sounds, words, and concepts, and could be written in any direction, following the gaze of the figures. Only in 1822, when the Rosetta Stone was deciphered, humanity was able once again to hear the voice of the ancient pharaohs. But perhaps nothing tells better the Egyptian obsession with eternity than the art of mummification. For exactly 70 days, embalmers transform bodies into guardians of time. Immersed in natron, a miraculous salt extracted from desert lakes, the deceased lost 75% of their weight, but gained immortality. Every part of the body was wrapped with linen bandages, which could reach 300 meters, creating masterpieces of preservation that even today, after 3,000 years, maintain intact even the eyelashes. These masters of eternity also invented papyrus, forever revolutionizing the recording of information in the ancient world, and created one of the first 365-day calendars, based on the cycles of the Nile and the stars which have always guided the destiny of this land. Tourism, finally essential as much as fragile, brings millions of visitors to contemplate these wonders, but remains vulnerable to the geopolitical storms of contemporary history, reminding us that even in a land of eternity, the present has its challenges. Egypt, therefore, is much more than a simple nation. It is an entire world, a place where eternity has taken shape in stone and has been preserved. But now let's go to discover the most incredible and iconic places of this nation. Cairo. Welcome to the Mother of the World, as the Arabs call it, or Al-Qahira, the city that never sleeps. "20 million people move in a chaotic but perfectly organized urban mix among Ottoman minarets, Mamluk palaces, and modern skyscrapers. The scent of mint tea mixes with infinite honking, while the muezzin calls to prayer from atop the mosques. In the dusty streets, street vendors shout to sell their products, while children play among cars stopped in traffic, and in traditional bars called ahwa, men smoke shisha and play backgammon until late at night. In the bazaars, sharp-eyed merchants bargain in 5 different languages, selling everything, from colored spices to hand-painted papyrus. But the real treasure is the Egyptian Museum. In fact, here rests Tutankhamun, with his gold mask weighing 24 pounds or 11 kilograms, surrounded by 5,000 objects that tell 3,000 years of civilization. Every hall is a dive into time. And when the sun sets, the Nile turns pink, while the typical sailboats move silently toward infinity. Luxor. Imagine a museum city where every stone speaks of gods and pharaohs. Luxor rises on the ruins of ancient Thebes, which was the capital of the empire when Egypt dominated the known world. Here, between the 2 banks of the Nile, we find the Temple of Luxor, the complex of Karnak, and the Valley of the Kings. The Valley of the Kings opens like a natural amphitheater carved in the desert, where 64 pharaohs rest, including young Tutankhamun. Their tombs are authentic art galleries, with walls painted with scenes from the Book of the Dead, stellar maps, and magical formulas to guide the king in the afterlife. The tomb of Seti I, 394 feet or 120 meters long, descends into the bowels of the mountain, while Ramses VI rests under a ceiling that reproduces the sky goddess Nut. Every tomb is a journey into the deepest Egyptian imagination, where death is not an end, but transformation. Continuing on the other side of the Nile, the Temple of Karnak awaits like a giant. It is a religious complex as large as 10 cathedrals, built by 30 different pharaohs over the span of 2,000 years. The hypostyle hall, that is supported by columns, counts 134 columns as tall as 7-story buildings, decorated with hieroglyphs that still shine with original colors. Walking inside means becoming tiny ants. The Temple of Luxor, finally, is distinguished by its access avenue flanked by sphinxes and by its twin obelisks, one of which now stands in Paris in Place de la Concorde. It was connected to the nearby Temple of Karnak and served for great religious festivals, when thousands of people gathered to celebrate the gods. Alexandria. Here, Alexander the Great dreamed of a city that would unite East and West, and that dream became the most cultured metropolis of antiquity. Alexandria was home to the world's most famous library and the lighthouse standing 394 feet, or 120 meters tall, which was one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world. Today, the city breathes nostalgia, with historic seaside cafes and decadent palaces that tell of when Greeks, Italians, French, and Armenians lived here, in an unrepeatable multicultural mosaic. The waterfront stretches for kilometers, while underwater lie the remains of the ancient lighthouse in Cleopatra's palace. Even today, marine archaeologists continue to pull up statues and columns from the seabed. Alexandria is therefore a city where the past literally continues to emerge from the water, reminding us that some greatness is never completely erased. Sharm el-Sheikh. Where the Sinai Desert meets the Red Sea, a paradise is born that the whole world has now heard about. Sharm el-Sheikh shines like a gem, set between mountains of golden sandstone and turquoise waters that hide one of the most spectacular coral reefs on the planet. Below the surface, in fact, a kaleidoscope of life explodes in every direction. Parrotfish in impossible colors, white-tipped sharks that move silently, and turtles swimming among corals as big as cars. Nama Bay is the beating heart of the city, with luxury resorts, international restaurants, and duty-free shops that attract millions of tourists every year. The private beaches of the big hotels offer lounge chairs and umbrellas just meters from the famous diving sites, making Sharm the undisputed capital of Egyptian beach tourism. For those who also want to visit, in the historic center stands the Great Mosque, with its white minarets and golden dome that dominate the city's skyline, offering a touch of Islamic tradition in this modern tourist destination. White Desert and Black Desert. In the heart of the Egyptian Sahara, nature has sculpted two opposite and complementary works of art. The Black Desert stretches like a sea of volcanic rock, where dark dunes contrast with quartz crystals that shine like scattered diamonds. Here the mountains seem sprinkled with coal dust, while hot springs gush from the subsoil, creating unexpected green oases. A few hours walk away, however, the landscape transforms radically. The White Desert takes over and explodes in a symphony of impossible shapes. Gypsum mushrooms 33 feet or 10 meters tall, natural sphinxes and salt castles that the wind has shaped for millennia create a truly surreal open-air museum. During the hottest hours of the day, the sun transforms these natural sculptures into blazing furnaces, creating plays of light and shadow that continuously change the perception of the surrounding space. The colors of sunset tinge the gypsum with golden and rosy hues, while the echo of the wind is the only audible sound in this geological wonder. Abydos. In the silence of the desert, 99 miles or 160 kilometers north of Luxor, rises the most sacred place of ancient Egypt. Abydos preserves the temple of Seti I, a masterpiece of pharaonic art, where every millimeter of wall is covered with reliefs, hieroglyphs, and painted scenes, with incredible precision. Here is found the royal list of Abydos, that is 76 cartouches that list all the pharaohs from the unification of Egypt, a sort of family tree carved in stone from 1,500 years. But the real treasure is the Osirian, a mysterious structure buried in sand for centuries. They are enormous blocks of pink granite assembled without mortar, with a precision that defies all explanation. The underground chambers, flooded by a water table, reflect the stars painted on the ceilings. Here, according to legend, the god Osiris was buried, lord of the dead and rebirth. In the past, every Egyptian pilgrim dreamed of being buried at Abydos to guarantee immortality. Giza Pyramid Complex. The morning sun strikes three stone giants that have defied time for over 4,500 years. The Great Pyramid of Cheops rises like a perfect geometric mountain built with 2.3 million limestone blocks, each weighing as much as a modern car. Beside it, the pyramids of Khafre and Menkaure complete this sacred triangle, which once shone with bright white limestone, visible for kilometers away. Here, the desert meets the urban chaos of modern Cairo, creating a contrast that almost moves you. It's possible to walk among these colossi and feel the weight of history. They are not just monuments, but the only ones of the seven wonders of the ancient world still standing. Every stone tells of brilliant engineers who succeeded in the impossible, using only ramps, levers, and the strength of thousands of workers. And these three pyramids are just part of the wonders hidden in this area. In fact, just a few meters away, you can discover the other great Egyptian mystery. Sphinx of Giza. Half man, half lion, the Sphinx emerges from the golden sand like an enigma carved in living rock. Measuring 73 meters long and 20 meters high, or 240 feet long and 66 feet high, this mythological creature positions itself strategically next to the pyramids, completing the sacred complex of Giza with its mysterious presence. Its fixed gaze toward the east, where the sun rises every day, seems to dialogue eternally with the three colossi at its back. The face, probably that of Pharaoh Khafre, who is the same as the second pyramid, bears the signs of time and sandstorms. For centuries, this statue remained buried up to the neck, with only the head protruding from the desert like a forgotten dream. The missing nose, moreover, feeds legends. Some say it's Napoleon's fault, others blame religious fanatics. But the truth is simpler: natural erosion. Observing that ancient stone means letting yourself be enveloped by the world's most ancient mystery. What secrets does it hide beneath its powerful paws? Aswan. At Egypt's extreme south, where the Nile draws gentle curves near Sudan, the city of Aswan welcomes with a slow rhythm. The typical white boats float among verdant islets dotted with palm trees, while from Elephantine Island comes the sound of Nubian drums at sunset. Here the desert meets Black Africa, and you feel it in the darker faces, in the different music, in the sense of spices that arrive from Sudan. The Nubian people, who have ancient roots, welcome among the colored houses that tell stories as ancient as the Nile itself. Reachable by boat from Aswan, in fact, the Nubian villages are an explosion of colors, with houses painted in blue, yellow, and pink, geometric decorations on the walls, women selling fragrant spices, and men offering sweet tea to visitors. You can still hear the Nubian language, while dromedaries rest in the shade in the streets, and souk stalls offer colorful fabrics and traditional jewelry. Saqqara. "19 miles or 30 kilometers south of Cairo, the desert hides the world's oldest funerary complex. Here, 4,700 years ago, the architect Imhotep literally invented the pyramid, building for Pharaoh Djoser humanity's first stone structure, the Step Pyramid. Saqqara is a true open-air history book, 5 miles or 8 kilometers long. Nobles, officials, and members of the royal family rest here in mastabas, which are bench-shaped tombs and decorated with scenes of daily life so detailed that they seem like photographs of ancient Egypt. They represent farmers plowing, fishermen casting nets, and women kneading bread. In this place, time has truly stopped, and every step takes you back 50 centuries when Egypt took its first steps toward immortality. Siwa Oasis. "342 miles or 550 kilometers from Cairo, in the heart of the Sahara, rises a true green miracle. We're talking about the Siwa Oasis, where 300,000 date palms create shade and coolness in the middle of infinite nothingness. This miracle is possible thanks to a fossil aquifer, which lies in the subsoil for thousands of years, feeding hundreds of natural springs that make this depression in the desert fertile. Here, time is marked by the prayers of the Siwi Berbers, and even if it may seem strange, the houses are made of mud and salt and climb on hills like nativity scenes. The hot springs instead, which gush from the subsoil, create natural pools where Alexander the Great himself bathed. Hurghada. Along 25 miles or 40 kilometers of pristine coast, Hurghada transforms the eastern desert into an aquatic playground. Here, the Red Sea offers its most beautiful spectacle, with crystal-clear waters and coral reefs that have made this destination the capital of Egyptian beach tourism. The landscape, moreover, is a surreal contrast, with desert sand dunes that meet directly with the waters of the Red Sea, dotted only by modern resorts that break the desert immensity. In fact, here there are hundreds of all-inclusive resorts that face directly onto the sea, with private beaches, pools, and every imaginable comfort for a dream vacation. The nightlife of Marina Boulevard finally pulses until dawn, with international restaurants, beach bars, and nightclubs that attract vacationers from around the world. Abu Simbel. Two twin temples, carved into the red rock of Nubia, is so far from the world that they seem to belong to another planet. Ramses II, the most megalomaniac pharaoh in history, had 4 colossal statues of himself carved here, 66 feet or 20 meters tall, which have watched over the Nile for 3,200 years. Every detail tells of his glory, including the double royal cobra on his forehead, or the perfect folds of the pleated kilt, or the 10-foot or 3-meter-long feet that symbolically trample Egypt's enemies. Inside the temple, corridors and halls follow one another, among pillars decorated with battle scenes and colored reliefs that seem painted yesterday. The walls tell the victories of Ramses, especially the Battle of Kadesh, where the pharaoh boasted of having defeated thousands of enemies by himself. Beside the great temple rises the one dedicated to Queen Nefertari, where for the first time in Egyptian history, a woman appears as tall as the pharaoh. A true silent revolution carved in stone. Inside the temple, twice a year, that is on February 22nd and October 22nd, a ray of sun crosses 197 feet or 60 meters to perfectly illuminate 3 of the 4 statues in the Sancta Sanctorum. And do you know why only 3 are illuminated? Because the 4th represents Ptah, god of darkness and the underworld, and must remain forever in the dark according to Egyptian theology. But here there was also a modern miracle. In fact, in the 1960s, when the Aswan Dam threatened to submerge them, UNESCO cut the temples into 1,036 blocks and rebuilt them 213 feet or 65 meters higher, like a giant puzzle that involved 50 nations of the world. Gouna. Along the Red Sea coast, Gouna can be defined as a lagoon city eco-sustainable resort, an urban experiment in the middle of the desert. Built on 18 artificial islands, connected by bridges and canals, it seems like a Venice of the desert, where instead of gondolas, there are colorful taxi boats. The architect who designed it in the 1990s created a micro-world where Nubian architecture mixes with contemporary design, and we therefore find white domes, cool courtyards, and bougainvillea that explode with color against walls painted ochre. Each island has its own identity. Some host luxury resorts with private villas on the water. Others are dedicated to golf and wellness centers, while the central islands teem with restaurants, bars, and boutiques that attract a sophisticated international clientele. The Gouna Conference Center finally, with its futuristic architectural lines that contrast with the surrounding desert environment, has become a reference point for international events and a symbol of the visionary ambition of this artificial city. Dashur, 25 miles or 40 kilometers from Cairo, two pyramids tell the story of Egyptian architectural evolution. Snefru's bent pyramid amazes with its unique shape. In fact, it's built with an inclination of 54 degrees, but at half height the angle suddenly changes to 43 degrees. A calculation error by the architects? A structural collapse? The mystery remains unsolved, but the result is an unmistakable silhouette that breaks the horizon. Beside it, the red pyramid marks triumph instead. The first true pyramid in history. Perfect in its geometry and mother of all the pyramids that would follow. Dashur represents the experimental laboratory of pyramid builders who here failed, here triumphed, and here the legend was born. Marsa Alam. On the Red Sea coast, where the eastern desert touches crystal clear water, Marsa Alam guards one of Egypt's best-kept secrets. Here, sandy beaches alternate with protected bays, where sea turtles nest undisturbed. Elphinstone Reef emerges from the depths, with coral walls that plunge into the blue abyss, inhabited by gray sharks, giant manta rays, and schools of barracuda. But the real treasure is Marsa Mubarak, a turquoise lagoon where dugongs graze peacefully on algae meadows on the sandy bottom. These marine mammals, cousins of manatees, can reach 10 feet or 3 meters in length and live up to 70 years. Seeing them emerge to breathe or simply swimming on the surface is an experience that touches the soul. The area remains wild and underdeveloped, with eco-sustainable resorts that protect this habitat. Kom Ombo Temple. On the river, caressed by the waves of the Nile, rises a temple unique in the world. Double, symmetrical, and perfect. Kom Ombo is divided exactly in half between two divinities. Sobek, the crocodile god with terrible jaws, and Horus, the divine falcon. Two entrances, two sancta sanctorum, two of everything. Even the ancient Egyptians didn't want to risk offending either of the two. The walls overflow with medical scenes, with surgical instruments, cesarean sections, and dental cures that demonstrate how advanced Egyptian medicine was. Next to the temple, the Crocodile Museum preserves perfectly preserved mummies of these sacred reptiles, where once pilgrims consulted oracles. And if the animal accepted the offered food, the answer was positive. Dahab. In the heart of Sinai, where mountains of red sandstone reflect in cobalt-colored waters, Dahab preserves the soul of a Bedouin village that has embraced the world. The name means gold in Arabic, and here by gold we mean the sunsets that set the mountains on fire while camels walk on the beach. Asala, which is the old part, still smells of incense, and Bedouin tea, and there are improvised cafes where people smoke shisha. The golden sand beaches stretch for kilometers, perfect for windsurfing and kite surfing thanks to constant winds that blow all year. But Dahab also hides the Blue Hole, an underwater chasm 427 feet or 130 meters deep that attracts divers from around the world. This perfectly circular crater is connected to the open sea by a tunnel at 180 feet or 55 meters depth. Crossing it means swimming in a blue cathedral where light filters from above, illuminating the black coral walls. In the hinterland, finally, the colored canyon offers spectacular trekking among sandstone walls in shades of red, yellow, and purple. Kalabsha Temple. The Imagine a temple that has traveled twice in history. First to escape the waters of Lake Nasser, then to continue to amaze. Kalabsha, dedicated to the Nubian god Mandalise, now rises on an artificial island near the Aswan Dam, saved and moved here by UNESCO in the 1960s. Its stones mix the Egypt of the pharaohs with Nubian traditions. In fact, here, Augustus Caesar had his name carved, next to hieroglyphs that celebrated divinities with unpronounceable names. The reliefs show the pharaoh offering gifts to a god with human body and falcon head, while dark-skinned Nubian priests attend the ceremonies. The temple columns still preserve the original colors after 2,000 years, and Roman imperial cartouches mix with sacred Nubian symbols. Every stone is therefore a piece of the puzzle that unites two worlds, the Egypt that everyone knows and the Nubia that few have discovered. Edfu. Between Luxor and Aswan, along the western bank of the Nile, rises the best-preserved temple of all Egypt. Dedicated to Horus, the falcon god with spread wings, the temple remained buried under 39 feet or 12 meters of sand and debris for centuries, preserving intact colors and reliefs. The majestic pylons, 118 feet or 36 meters high, narrate the eternal battle between Horus and Seth, that is, between light and darkness and order and chaos. In the Sancta Sanctorum, the sacred boat of black granite still awaits the god who will never return, while the walls ooze secrets, including recipes for sacred perfumes, magical formulas, and astronomical calendars that mark the rhythms of religious life. Walking among these columns, you can still perceive the echo of dozens of celebrations that were held here millennia ago. Philae Temple. On an island floating in the Nile, the Temple of Philae, dedicated to the goddess Isis, defies the impossible. This sanctuary, dedicated precisely to the goddess of magic and motherhood, lived a second birth in the 1970s, when it was dismantled stone by stone from the island of Philae, now submerged and rebuilt on the island of Agilkia. The papyriform columns reflect in the water, while the pylons tell the story of Isis who brought Osiris back to life. The capitals shaped like lotus flowers seem to bloom, and the echo of ancient ritual chants still seems to resonate among these walls. Here, the last hieroglyph in history was carved in 394 AD, when the ancient world was about to give way to Christianity. Colossi of Memnon. Two stone giants sit in silence for 3,400 years, watching the sun rise every day over the plain of Luxor. 59 feet or 18 meters tall, these faceless guardians once watched over the funerary temple of Amenhotep III, the pharaoh who ruled Egypt when it was the superpower of the ancient world. Almost nothing remains of the temple, but they are still there, impassive, witnesses of conquests and defeats, of empires that are born and die. The right colossus, however, hides a secret that made the Romans tremble. For centuries at dawn, it emitted a plaintive sound that echoed in the valley. The ancients believed it was Memnon, son of Aurora, who greeted his mother every morning, but the reality was more mundane. Simply, the cracks in the stone caused by an earthquake vibrated with the first rays of the sun, creating this acoustic phenomenon. In fact, when the Romans repaired the statues, this song was silenced forever. Temple of Hathor. At Dendera, 37 miles or 60 kilometers from Luxor, hides one of Egypt's most surprising treasures, and it's the Temple of Hathor, goddess of love, music, and joy. Looking up at the ceilings, you remain literally speechless in front of the most detailed stellar maps of antiquity. The zodiac of Dendera, carved 2,000 years ago, represents constellations and planets with incredible astronomical precision, demonstrating the extraordinary knowledge of the ancient Egyptians. The columns, instead, have capitals carved in the shape of Hathor's face, with bovine ears and sweet eyes that seem to follow you as you walk. But the real spectacle begins when you look up, with scenes of the sky goddess who swallows the sun every evening and gives birth to it every morning. In the underground crypts, finally, bas-reliefs show priests carrying mysterious sacred objects, including what some archaeologists interpret as ancient light bulbs. Science fiction or artistic genius? The mystery remains, but the beauty is indisputable. Sinai Peninsula. A triangle of rock and sand suspended between Africa and Asia. The Sinai is much more than a bridge between continents. It's a natural open-air museum. Here, Moses received the tablets of the law on Mount Sinai, while Saint Catherine preserves in her monastery both manuscripts and the burning bush, with 1,600 years of history. The red granite mountains rise up to 8,530 feet, or 2,600 meters, while the Bedouins, guardians of this territory since always, know every valley and hidden spring. Their black tents dot the desert, and camels move in caravans that disappear into the horizon. In this place, moreover, the desert meets the sea, in an embrace that takes your breath away and restores your soul. Concluding this visual journey through Egypt, we have moved from the charm of its pyramids to modern cities and desert landscapes, exploring together not only places, but also curiosities that make every corner of this land unique. We hope that the images and stories told have enriched your knowledge and stimulated the desire to personally explore the extraordinary beauty of this fascinating country.